Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Aurora. This is July 15th already, 2024. And this is the second installment in my series of what I'm calling Aurora Stories or Ask Me Anything about my journey of being a walk-in. And this is all really at the encouragement of Lan, who's my organizer for my retreats and also a wonderful student, participant, and friend who told me that they got so much from the different stories that I shared about my personal journey being a walk-in when I was at the retreat that I hosted in May, that it would be wonderful to do more of that because I had been keeping my information, in my videos, mostly focused on professionalism and my curriculum that I have on my Wednesday classes and not that much about me. But I'm talking about me. I love talking about me. And sometimes I guess being a little bit vulnerable, it feels a little bit vulnerable talking about myself and sharing authentically. But I did last month and got really beautiful feedback on that. And so I've decided to make it a regular experience. So the way that this is structured, this is about an hour's presentation or maybe a little bit more depending on how much energy I have. And also, you're invited and encouraged if you want to ask questions or comments over in the chat, and I'll be very responsive to that. Or I don't know if you know how Zoom works, but you can go down to the bottom and there's different reactions you can do, and you can raise your hand if you want to raise your hand in order to ask a question. So consider this an Ask Me Anything. And I'm also going to begin with something that Lan wanted to know more about. And I said that I would make that what I'll begin with for my next Ask Me Anything. And um, so the question was about what it was like when I first came in to this body, because my body had a lot of brain damage, and what it was like trying to integrate and what those first couple of even years were like. So I'm very, very happy to speak to you about this because you guys see me now in my full presence where I'm doing really wonderfully physically. Like you can tell, I walk on my treadmill. I'm able to coordinate the left side and right side of my body. I'm able to articulate and remember what I'm trying to say. And you also know me as a musician, where now I coordinate both of my hands and my songwriting and my composing. And all of this is really complex neurological stuff. And you guys also know me now as an established visual artist, where I've done, you can't see my studio, just it's very hot here today, so I don't have all the studio lights on. But when things are all lit up and you can see all my paintings, if you ever wanted to get a better look at my paintings, just go to my website and go to the art tab, and there's a beautiful slideshow where you can see all of the details there. But you can tell that that's all like tons of eye-hand coordination, tons of mathematical ability, and also tons of concentration. And so you wouldn't necessarily know from looking at all of those accomplishments the mountains that I had to climb to be able to do these things. So it took me a long time. Aurelia's first question says, how long did it take you to become coordinated? A long time. All right. So I came in 2000, October 8th of 2001, and that's my walk-in day. That's also like the death day of the previous occupant of this body. Um, and I would say that even up until 2003, I was really not coordinated in my body, and I did not have correct depth perception because I had a lot of damage to this side of my brain and to the functionality of this eye, and to be able to process and receive information from this eye pretty much like for the first 12 years or so of me being in my body. I had monocular vision. I didn't really process the information from this eye, and I pretty much saw the world as very flat without a lot of depth. And you can also tell a little bit. I still have a little bit of facial paralysis, like in my face. This eyebrow is up a lot higher than this eyebrow, and this one doesn't always go up when I gesture. I don't know why Chiki's talking. I don't know if you can hear her. Chiki's getting all agitated right now. Um, But for the first, over the first decade that I was here, hold on one second. It's a little bit hard for me to concentrate. I don't tend to. So for like over the first, whatever, 12 or 13 years that I was here in this body, I did not have very good eyesight. Wait, I should hear big things. Okay, so when I first came into this body, I did not have glasses or corrective lenses. And the brain injury and neurological injury to my body was so severe that overnight it caused my eyesight to worsen by 2 diopters. So eyesight that was -2 is now -4 diopters in the lens corrective system that you have here, which is a huge change. But then over the past, 2 decades of being here, my eyesight has not changed. Like I still have the same glasses prescription that I had when I first walked in. So that was all just 100% from neurological damage. But I didn't have glasses to be able to compensate for the changes in my eyesight. So for the first couple of years that I was here until 2003, I really could not see effectively. Not only did I not have good depth perception, but I did not have focus and clarity. And like I couldn't see people's faces, I couldn't read street signs. It was very, very difficult for me to be able to navigate the world. And I didn't comprehend human culture, and I also could not see effectively. So you can imagine some of the wild situations that I got into with all of that. And I was trying to like compensate and integrate into human society, not very well at all. But what I did have was an excellent memory. And so I used to memorize things. Like I couldn't see things very effectively, but I would just memorize their placement. And I would be able to memorize like where items are on a table and then know where they are, or where items are in the house, and then know where it is. So I always found a way to overcome my deficits by finding one of my strengths that I could use. One little anecdote is I had gotten a job at a farmer's stand in this is like 2002 or so, before I got corrective lenses. And because I just needed to have like some form of money, and I had no idea about commerce. I still was numerically illiterate, and not really comprehending what numbers were, but I was starting to recognize and learn them as symbols. And so for my job every day, I had to know how much things were per pound, like string beads, $1.99 per pound. And I could not see the signs around the store. So what I would do is I would go around each morning and I would look at the amount for each product, and I would just memorize it. And then when someone came to the front with like, I'd like to buy my string beans, I would know like, oh, that's $1.99 per pound. But I was adding everything up totally wrong. I still was not doing the math correctly, but I could at least still recognize the numbers enough to know what it was. So, and of course, I lost that job. It was not good. The guy knew after like a day or two, he's like, you're not actually doing math, are you? He asked me to add things up. And I was like, I couldn't do it. And he was like, you can't do this. So that was, difficult. Like just to give you an idea, that was me trying to integrate and not doing a very good job of integrating. So here are the things that had to happen, because that was before I got corrective lenses. So I had to get my eyesight checked and get corrective lenses. And I still did not have good depth perception, but at least once I got glasses and then later contact lenses, I could see with clarity. And so then for the first many years that I lived here, everything was very flat. And you wouldn't know that, again, from my artwork. Like all of the great paintings that I painted pretty much just looking through one eye to be able to do this. And even being able to drive my car, I had a lot of difficulty because of epilepsy, because of current seizures, and that's an artifact of the brain damage that I have, and still struggle with that a little bit. But it used to be uncontrolled and really a huge limiter in my life. And so I didn't feel very comfortable driving long distances, not only because of the difficulty of an impending seizure, but also because I had a lot of difficulty being able to judge distances. Like how far am I away from another car? How far away am I from a stoplight? Any of those things. So, to be in the world, I did a lot of flying by the seat of my pants, where like I did a lot of things that were dangerous, that I was not fully up to, but that I had to do it just in order to try to earn some money, or try to be effective, or try to be empowered in the world. But it was not ideal. It was not optimum. And didn't have the levels of social support that I needed. And I didn't have the ability to articulate to others. Like I didn't say to others at that time, hey, I actually have monocular vision and very poor spatial coordination and a lot of difficulty in driving. I didn't say that because I was like, I need to, be a part of society and earn money and do all the things that people do. So yeah, people didn't always know what was going on with me. One of my greatest weaknesses is trying to drive backwards, like when you have to back out of something. Really, really, really difficult because I had a lot of difficulty with like turning my neck, being able to look behind me, having only one eye that really functioned, and then trying to build a map of spatial reality of how far the car is and where it is in backing down a driveway or something like that. So still a huge weak point for me, even though I have literally driven across the country and driven all up and down California. And I drove a big giant haul truck and I have driven things with trailers on them. So I have done a lot of those things, even though it's very, very difficult for me to do it. Cheeky is still barking. Hold on a second. But I want to tell this in like a better, more methodical way because initially when I first came into this body, like the very first day or whatever, I could not comprehend numbers at all. Like the greatest deficit that I had is numerical illiteracy. So I had problems with my language centers and my ability to choose the right words. And I also had a total obliteration of my math ability, that I was starting from scratch. I couldn't even comprehend what numbers were. And like a 3 and an 8, they look the same to me because they're both kind of shaped like this. They're kind of shaped like two bubbles together and they just look the same. They look to me like just abstract hieroglyphics. And during that whole time before I actually got eyeglasses and had some social support, I really couldn't comprehend numbers at all. And so for me, you're like, you can't even imagine this. So you're like, but Aurora, like you bought food, clearly. I did. I comprehended that magical pieces of paper gave you access to food from either a food room or like a restaurant, a food place. And I knew I could go to the food place and I could point to what I wanted. And then they would give me the food and I would give them magical pieces of paper. And then some magical pieces of paper would come back to me. That's it. It's exactly like being in a foreign country where you have no idea the exchange rate or anything like that. And even very much like being in a foreign country where it's kind of like you don't even know how to ask for what you want. And then also I told you with food, like I had no idea about ingredients in food. Like I just knew food goes in here and you just eat and it tastes like stuff. And then you find the things that you like and then you continue to eat them. So I did not comprehend numbers and I did not comprehend money and I did not comprehend commerce other than its very, very basic levels of that. When I got that job at the farm stand, I was like just trying to begin to integrate because I also told you that when I first got here, I didn't know about the responsibility that you have in living in community and being in the economy. Somebody is paying for the resources that you use. Like if you stay with someone in their house, I thought like hot water comes out of a hole in the wall. Like that's your shower. I didn't know like there's a hot water heater, there's a gas bill, there's money involved here. And as soon as I got that comprehension from being immersed in your culture, I was like, oh, like this is costing someone something. That I'm staying with people and everything is great. And then I realized like, oh, I am costing someone something by being here. And as soon as I had that comprehension, I was like, oh, I have to try to get the money too, because it pays for the hot water that goes in the hole in the wall and all these other essential items. So I made that basic connection, but then it was still many years until I was really able to earn money effectively and learn how to manage money. So now we get into the era after I finally got some eyeglasses and I could see, which is an amazing gift because all of a sudden I could like see people's faces and their facial expressions because you can't navigate the world without being able to see people's facial expressions. Like it was a completely different world for me from that moment forward. And then I began with just getting a simple job in an art supply store. And this was, again, no one knew how much I was going through like a personal reconstruction in my brain to be able to have that job. They had no idea. And I faked them all out because I couldn't say to them, I'm an extraterrestrial interdimensional visitor with an enormous amount of brain damage here in your world to uplift you, but first I have to learn about your culture. Can you please hire me for this job? I couldn't say that. That would not have worked. So I had to be like, yeah, like I'm totally qualified for this job. Please hire me. And you can tell I'm being like totally sarcastic and facetious. So I did have like a lot of saucy attitude, even from the very beginning, where I'm like, I'm going to talk my way into that job because I'm somehow going to do this. All right. So I initially talked my way into this entry level position in an art supply store because I have always, since I came here as Aurora, I loved making my artwork and knew and have known that that is my life's purpose. And I, knew something about art supplies. So I'm like, okay, I will go to the art supply store and I will apply for a job there because I, started to comprehend how this whole job process works. And I worked in the craft department there, and my job was to stock things onto the shelves. And this is the beginning of how I started to reconstruct my brain because like they never would have hired me if they knew how bad my brain was. But all of these items come into the store and they all have a little serial number on them. And then the store has shelves and you have to match the serial number to the item on the shelf. You have to put it on the right place so that it's got the right price tag and all those different things, right? And that was how I started to heal my brain. And what I would do is I would sing the numbers to myself, creating new neural pathways, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I just knew that I could remember the numbers if I sang them. And so, I'd be like opening up boxes of pens or like sculpture tools or whatever it is. And this one is like 626-934. And I have to remember 626-934. And I remember it in my mind by singing the song 626-934. And then I look on the wall and I look to see where is 626-934. And I'm like matching up the numbers so that it looks the same. You understand? Because I started to be able to differentiate like a 3 is not the same as an 8. And a 6 is an upside down 9. And I would figure out matching up the symbols and singing them in my brain. And I started to do that. And by doing that, started to create new neural pathways in my brain. And I did that for about 6 months until I got bored with it because I had overcome that limitation. And then I was like, okay, my muscles are bored. Now I want to go on to the next thing. And there was a small custom framing department at that store. And again, I talked my way into this job. So here's what happened. This is a good story. They had an opening in the custom framing department, and it was definitely a level up from my department. And I went there and I said, I'd like to apply for this job. And they said, oh. And I'm like, And then they hired this other guy. His name is Bill. And they hired Bill, and he worked there for a week, and he did a terrible job. He did every order wrong. He did every measurement wrong. He treated customers very badly. And then one day he just decided not to show up for work. And I watched this whole entire thing. That's me from my side eye, watching this whole entire thing go on. And then Bill doesn't show up for work one day. And I go back to the supervisor and I say, hey, give me a chance. Because I cannot be any worse than Bill, right? Just give me a chance. And this supervisor looked at me. He's like, all right, kind of like, show me your stuff, kid. Like, cut this mat for me. And I'm like, I'm not going to say to him, like, I am an interdimensional visitor and I have no idea what this activity is or how to perform it for you. And I couldn't say that. I wanted the job. So I was like, why don't you give me the tutorial? He's like, okay, fine. Just measure this out. It's 2 inches. And then he looked at me like this. He's like, he looked over his glasses, like, do you even know what an inch is? And I couldn't say no because I needed the job. So I was like, why don't you show me? And so he literally had to show me on the ruler. Do I have a ruler? Yeah, wait, let me get a tape measure because this is what he did. He literally had to show me with a tape measure. He's like, look, kid, this is an inch. And then this is half an inch. And then this is a quarter of an inch. And then this is an eighth of an inch. And my mind was blown And then he's like, yeah. And then this is 12 inches. And then this is 24 inches. And I got it. I comprehended it because it was visual. It gets longer and the number gets bigger, and it gets shorter and the number gets smaller. And that was my aha moment when I really started to comprehend what numbers were. And from that job in the custom framing department, I was then able to really heal and expand my mind and become much more capable. And it was about 3 years of working in custom framing where I really constructed myself and became much more competent for navigating the human realm. So at that job, again, none of them knew that I was working with a severe brain injury and a lot of visual deficit. And they used to laugh at me too, at how socially inept I was and very uncool. And I worked with a lot of young people. And so you can just imagine me being like, I'm a total fish out of water and I do not fit in. Like they were just because we'd be like listening to music or something like that. And someone said something. And I was like, oh, yes, to shake one's booty, it means to wiggle your butt. And they were just laughing, like, yes, yes, Professor Aurora, that is what it is. But now I am a real professor, but they thought it was very funny how I didn't comprehend or know pop culture. So I learned how to measure things. And I also learned in counting out the cash drawer, which was also my responsibility in that position at the end of each day to count the cash and make sure that everything balanced out. That was so what I started to envision in comprehending numbers. The number line gets longer when numbers get bigger, and also 4 quarters come together to make a dollar. 4 circles of 25-cent pieces come together in order to make $1. And that was a huge thing. I used my visual sense. And so I used my auditory sense to be able to comprehend what numerals were. And then I started to use my visual sense to envision numbers coming together to create these packets. And I would envision like packets of 10, and here's a 7, and here's a 3, and a 7 and a 3, and these almost like Tetris-like blocks fitting together. And it was before I had done my paintings. It was before I even had done the very simple paintings that I have at the beginning of my journey. And so it was through envisioning different harmonically proportioned circles coming together that I started to comprehend and unlock numbers. And then I started to put that into my paintings. Because from that job at the art supply studio, I also I connected with a small group of artists that had like a warehouse in a not so great neighborhood, like where it was cheap, and they rented a big giant warehouse and they divided it up between all different artists. And you paid, small amounts, and you got to work in this big giant warehouse. And then that became like my second home because I would be like like artwork, safety, sanctuary, and refuge. So yeah, I rented a small area of this big giant art studio and had a beautiful place to be able to work. And that was where I started in New Jersey to do like my glass paintings. And I did some of those iconic pieces that broke, but it was where I was just starting to learn about the calibrations of these harmonic principles and how they fit together, working with circle templates and organizing my mind in that way. And the happy part of this story is that I really developed at an accelerated pace. I learned not only about numbers and about arithmetic, like adding and subtracting, because when I worked as a custom framer, I had to do an estimate. So like if you came to me and you're like, I have this painting of a sad clown, I'd like to frame it, please. First, I would have to be like, what a beautiful sad clown painting. Even if I didn't really feel it at all. If I thought like, that is not a good painting, but I had to be like, let's frame that beautiful piece of artwork for you. And then I had to be able to do an estimate, like your mat will cost this much, and your glass will cost this much, and your frame will cost this much, and then add it all together, plus your labor and your tax, and this is the final amount that you will have to go through. And that part ended up becoming my favorite part of the job. That my least favorite part of the job was actually when I had to interact with people, which some of you might relate to. Not, oh, no offense to you, but I started to learn like, not everybody here is telepathic, because when people would come in to frame something, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to beam a picture into your mind. I'd be like, oh, do you want it to look like this? You want it to look like this? And then people would be like, what? And I was like, these guys aren't getting my messages here. And then I learned not everyone here is telepathic. So I was like, oh, I actually have to show you the thing. Maybe you want it to look like this, or you want it to look like this. So I learned people are not telepathic, and I was going to have to be very explicit and spell it all out for you. And then also, there's all sorts of challenges with human behavior. And I sometimes enjoyed interacting with people and the quality of their interactions, but I sometimes felt like the quality of their interactions was very draining, negative, or otherwise unpleasant. And so my favorite part of my day and of these human interactions ended up becoming the part when I get to add everything up. That I started out at my job in using a calculator, like a glass plus labor plus mat plus this plus this plus this. But I started to get good after a couple of years of doing this at adding it up in my head, because I again was envisioning these packets of 10 and these circles coming together. And at a certain point, so now this is like a couple of years later, and I was actually running my own small custom framing department in a different store. Again, then I had to talk my way into that situation. Sorry, I lost the train of thought because I went to the meeting. Oh, I didn't have to use calculator anymore. So then I was like running my department, and I realized one day, like, something, I actually don't have to put this all into the calculator in order to be able to add this up. I can do it much faster in my own mind. And so that was a beautiful day when I really realized that I had mastered things to that point, and had developed some agility with my mind and my brain. And that was also like kind of at the beginning of my journey, really making high quality professional level art pieces, and not just small sketches in a sketchbook or something like that. So I got really good at being able to add up the numbers and do the inner visualizations with my mind, and not having to rely upon a calculator. And then this is me, like every time I get good at something, I'm like, okay, now I'm bored. Now I'm bored, and now I need to find a way to make things, more interesting and level up even more. So I've always propelled myself beyond all of these different positions. So the answer, I hope that this speaks to this, and I'm definitely willing to go for more if you have questions for more clarifications. But so that job where I had finally mastered my math abilities, that was about 2006 or so. So I had been here for about 5 years. And that's also like being a kindergartner. I was like, just my levels of development were like a kindergartner, even though my intellect was far advanced from the kindergartner. But I did not have a lot of wisdom or social skills or comprehension about the world. And I was just starting to gain the mathematical abilities that are needed in terms of being able to earn your money, have a bank account, do financial planning, and live a life and live well. So let me go over to here and get some of these questions. So, all right, so wait, first over to here. Phil, thank you for tuning in. It's great to reconnect. Says, amazing story. You are an inspiration. Did you have any assistance telepathically from your family of origin or collective when you walked in? Could you still remain in contact if they were able to help? How did they assist you to work through the physical changes? Infinite love to you from us and Bristows. Thank you very much for the love received. Really appreciate you. Feel your love and your care for me. Thank you so much. So the answer is, I have been in touch with my Aurora collective the whole entire time that I've been here. And the 5G and these different technologies in the recent years have made it very difficult to maintain my telepathic connection. So it's been more difficult within the past 4 or 5 years. But when I first came here, yeah, like no problem whatsoever. I talked with my otherworldly level of being all the time and was constantly in rapport. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I was able to help myself from that level of reality with simple basic tasks. Like I was not able to be directed, like, go here, buy this, do this, like none of that. Like I had to figure out all those things because from where I come from in my collective, like we don't have or use money. We don't have or use bank accounts. We do not drive cars. We do not use technology. We do not do a lot of the things that are very normal here in this world. I had no basis of education or comparison to be able to do those things. And also, so I had to level up and learn about technology. I had to learn about having a bank account and all of that type of, responsible adult activity here. But then I also had to learn about human activities that are aberrant, like lying, because we don't have that where I come from. So that was one of the steepest learning curves for me. It wasn't about learning how to do math in the world or comprehend your commerce. It was really being able to comprehend that people lie and that their words don't match their actions. And I continue to be startlingly literal in my interactions, which means like not taking subtext or anything other than just people's overt words, because that's the way that I am. And that is just very, very different than most humans who understand implications and nuanced social cues. So although I don't label myself as being autistic or on the autistic spectrum, and I'm hugely supportive of those who are neurodivergent. I am neurodivergent, but I'm not on the autistic spectrum because my brain is like not normal. That is neurodivergent. But what I'm trying to say is that in different housemate and roommate situations, what I've had to do is learn to articulate to the people that I live with, like, if you need something from me, you have to overtly articulate it to me because I will not pick up on subtle social cues as others might, you know? Like there's a lot of things that are not overtly said, especially in the world of social dynamics, friendship making, and mating and dating. And I'm not a part of the world of mating and dating, but others have presumed that I am. And then I've had to learn, like when someone approaches you and they say, like, would you like to go out to lunch? They are not just offering you calories. You can't just be literal and think like, oh, like they're offering me nourishment and sustenance. Like, yes, I would like to receive sustenance. Thank you very much. You have to comprehend, like, they mean something different with their words than what they are actually saying. So I did not comprehend lies, and I totally did not comprehend subtext to hilarious consequences many, many times when I did not really comprehend what a person was saying. And now that I have more perspective, I know from experience what people were actually saying, but I did not know that from back then. And also, I made very many funny jokes unintentionally because I was being the straight man, which is where you actually believe something when someone says, like, you gullible is under you in the dictionary, and you actually go to the dictionary and you start to look under you for the word gullible. Like that was me. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me look that up. And they're like, no, that's not true. So I had to learn in these very many ways the things that were and were not truthful and how they were coordinated. So my Aurora collective and myself from the otherworldly perspective is very loving, very caring of me, very protective of me, but not very practical in being able to give me the level of direct parenting that I needed, guidance in being here. So what ended up being more helpful was I made some trusted friends in the human realm who I've always been totally out of the closet about who I am and what I'm experiencing. Again, to greater or lesser levels of acceptance, celebration, or sometimes hilarious consequences. Like I didn't say to my bosses and supervisors, like, hi, I'm an interdimensional alien. Like, I don't know anything. Hire me. I knew that that would not be the pathway towards career success and advancement. So, but with friends and other people in my life, I was totally out of the closet and overt. And I was like, I do not know about that. Please tell me about that. Like I didn't pretend at all. But with some family members, I pretended that I knew how to do stuff, but I just didn't know how to do this stuff. So like if there was a washing machine and I couldn't say to someone like, oh yeah, I'm an interdimensional visitor. I have no idea how to work this machine. I would just say to them, how do I work this machine? Like pretending that I'm an expert on every single other washer dryer in the world. I know all of them, except for this one. Maybe you can just show me how the buttons work on this one. So I did a little bit of that kind of play acting to protect myself in the beginning, because I could also tell that some people would be more protective and some people would be more dangerous to be fully, out of the closet and telling them exactly who I am and exactly what I'm going through. So it took me some time to find trustworthy people all around me who would protect me, and that they would know that I didn't, although my intellect was advanced and my wisdom galactic, that I didn't have a lot of practical social skills, and they were very protective of me and tried to help me to learn and sometimes explained things to me when I did not know about things. So I'm gonna keep going with your questions, but so that was when I lived in Woodstock, and I'm not really that much in touch with all of those friends, although I still do maintain Facebook connections with some of them. But I didn't know a lot about music. And there was a very well-known karaoke in Woodstock at the time. That was Thursday night, Miss Angie's Thursday night karaoke at Bearsville Theater. And it was a nice karaoke because it was actually up on a real stage with kind of red curtains, so that even if you weren't a professional musician, you felt very fancy and very real getting up there in order to sing. And I love music and loved music from since I first came in and loved to sing, but I did not know your songs at all. I did not know regular radio rock and songs and all these different things. And so I started going out to karaoke with my friends that I made in Woodstock, and they knew that I was an alien and they knew that I didn't know some music. And so this one guy, this is a good story. He was this little guy that you wouldn't think very much of just to look at him. But he got up there and he belted out Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen. And the entire place was clapping for him. He got a standing ovation. They carried him off the stage. People bought him drinks. And I was like, that song is amazing. And also, I want to sing like that and get that level of crowd support. And my friends were like, you don't know that song? And I'm like, oh, who's that? They're like, that is Queen. And you need to be educated right now. So they marched me home, and they put on the VH1 rockumentary behind the scenes, Queen, the music of Freddie Mercury and Queen. And I watched that. And it was my homework. And I was internalizing everything. And I was just so impressed by Freddie Mercury, his artistry, his flamboyant persona, his voice, everything. And so this is early, this is 2005 or 2006 or so. So now you're used to having everything available on the computer. But at that time, I don't even think that I had my own home computer. Having a computer was still considered somewhat of a luxury. But I did not have a cell phone. But what I ended up getting was borrowing a computer from a friend and then having access to YouTube. And YouTube was not even as extensive as it is now. But I used that as my portal to be able to study the music of Earth. And I studied pop music in exactly the same way that you might study Mozart or whatever, some formal, music from a particular culture. And I started to become an expertise. And I would read the lyrics. I would learn about the band. I would learn about the history of the song and its cultural importance. And then I would learn the song and I would sing along with it. And then I would go to karaoke and sing it in front of people. So I had to totally be educated and acculturated into what was good music and what was cool and who's a good artist. And then people would introduce me to things. And also the karaoke had a songbook, a fat book of options. And I used to flip through there and I would write things down on a little card. And then I would bring it home as my homework. Let's listen to this and see what this one sounds like. Let's learn about this song. So I did all self-education and learned rock and roll history, learnned about, I learned about everything. I learned about their personas and all of the lore surrounding the trivia and the lore surrounding some of these musicians, because Woodstock is a very rock and roll place. So I took my musical training very, very seriously. Still love to sing along with the work of Freddie Mercury and Queen. Brittany, thank you for being here today, says, tailing off of Philip's question above, but more centered around previous occupants' family. How involved was the previous occupant's family with helping to support you during these times? I can't imagine how challenging this must have been. Wow, thank you. So I did not have a lot of social support or familial support when I first came in. For like the first 2 years or so, like up until 2003, I lived on my own in the apartment of the previous occupant, and just, like was able to survive off of her savings account. Again, not comprehending money or anything like that, and not really having the recognition of family members. And I knew that I had to protect myself from misconceptions and misinterpretation that they might think that I was psychiatric. That's it. And I love people who are psychiatric. I have no problem with you. I celebrate you in your life. And I recognize the challenges that you are going through. But I knew that it was essential for me to protect myself so that I would not be incarcerated against my will or medicated against my will, because both of those things would have really derailed my life. So those were some people that in the early years I couldn't go to for all of the help that I wanted, because also I shared a little bit of this last week. I mean, last month when I shared with you. Initially when I came into this body, I approached family of the body that I'm connected to, and I said to them, like, I'm an interdimensional visitor. I just got here into this body, and you know something? There's a lot of things about your family that are unhealthy and corrupt, that are not right. This, and this, and this, and this. I gave them a whole laundry list, and they were like, "Who are you? Something is wrong with you. This is not okay." And I faced a lot of rejection, basically. And yeah, it was definitely shoot the messenger time. And because I had no social skills, and I didn't know how to bring that information to people in a way that they would be receptive. I thought, oh, like any flawed computer system, I thought like, oh, like you simply need to correct this. And they will surely want to know that they have erroneous information and change accordingly. And they did not want to know about the erroneous social dynamics or emotional dynamics of their world. Or in heavy denial, and they did not want to change accordingly. So I was not able to get a lot of validation and social support from them. And before I got eyeglasses, and even before I had medical care too, because I had vision problems, neurological problems, and undiagnosed, uncontrolled seizures. And all of those things made it very, very difficult for me to navigate the world effectively. Even once I learned about the necessity for commerce and earning money and making a contribution into the world, I still did not have the inner structure to be able to do that effectively. And I was also very, very underweight. Like now I'm well muscled and very strong, but I was very skinny and not well muscled and very underweight and just not really fully here. In fact, it wasn't until 2015 so I had been here for 14 years, that I finally had a session with an amazing healer. If you're in the Kaya area, I would really recommend her. She's very loving and an incredible person in my life. Her name is Heliana, and she did a Reiki session on me, and what you would call a rebirthing session, but for me it was birthing from the beginning. She helped me to become integrated into my body, because I didn't share this with you. I used to not have really sensation at the bottoms of my feet. Like I wasn't fully in my body. So from about my knees down, like my lower legs, I didn't really feel that. So like now I'm walking on a treadmill. So problem, I feel my lower legs. I feel where my feet are in space. I used to have the most difficulty knowing where my feet were in space. And I felt very floating and very non-integrated. And this is from a couple of things, because I haven't spoken a lot about this. But I have a spinal cord injury that is separate from the brain injury. And this is something that happened from around 2003 when I was actually violently assaulted. And it's like a very difficult and sad and bad thing that happened to me that really like broke vertebrae in my spine, and that injured me quite a lot and reduced the signal carrying strength of my spinal cord. So that was after being here for a couple of years. And it was, I didn't know how violent and dangerous the world could be until that incident. And then I learned, and then had to completely change and shift and level up. But it's something that was so severe it could have killed me, and I think was really intended to kill me. But I really survived it quite miraculously, but with a lot of deficit. And so after that, I did not have all the signals going to the bottoms of my feet, and not full integration, and also not very good firing of like the fast twitch muscles of my legs. So I can surely walk, but I couldn't walk very long distances, and I couldn't run. So that's why it's huge for me now to be able to do so much walking, and even to be able to do a little bit of light jogging. And I'm getting faster. I can run at like 3 miles an hour, which for me is really big. But that's really because it's taken me a long time to overcome the spinal cord injury that happened to me around that time. So uh, people just did not know in my life what I was facing and what I was trying to function in spite of with my body here. But I told you in the first story sharing session about how I'm able to do things with pure light to overcome the structural deficits of my body, but to simply use pure light, which is information beyond the physicality of what my body can do. And so I bounce signals around my body in very interesting ways, and use just the power of pure light to be able to accomplish a lot of things that would not be possible otherwise. And this is all much more difficult in the presence of 5G, which is why I wear so many 5G protectors, because 5G is anti-lasagna, and it makes it very difficult for me to do all of my compensatory light body signaling in my body. So yeah, I became very, very disheveled when they turned on 5G, and I wasn't able to use my light body to compensate as easily as I was up until that point. Um, but I did receive some social support from friends in Woodstock, in being able to kind of like have a place to stay, learn about the world, have some parenting, because I needed to have people tell me like this is what is not socially acceptable, or how you do things in the world, and also have some encouragement like as to my personality and my self-construction and who I am as a person. So I had to find people that would help me in that way. And when I got glasses, actually, that was from family members in New Jersey, because at a certain point they did recognize, like, wait a minute, like you should get your eyes checked. Like you probably can't see SHIT, and this is probably hurting you a lot. And that helped me out immensely, because I didn't have the money to go to an eye doctor, or whatever, pay hundreds of dollars for glasses or anything like that. So that helped me out a lot, and it also helped me to then get a vehicle and get a bank account. All of these things like I would not have been able to do because I didn't have identification. I didn't have any of those things. So I needed help from family members to be able to do that. So I did receive that level of help from them. But those first several years, I had so much angelic protection and so many force fields protecting me around me, because I was very, very endangered. Like I simply didn't know how dangerous the world was, and I had such minimal resources and was so exposed and vulnerable, and so I'm really not able to care for and protect myself. But I had to somehow, and that was, I think, just a very, very difficult time. And I was super duper innocent. I was like, everything is God, like SpongeBob face. Like, everything is beautiful. I didn't know, like, not here, not here. You are not safe here. That there's a lot of evil here, and that there's bad things here. I didn't know about any of that type of stuff, and that was even more of a steep learning curve than learning about like banking or personal finances. So Philip says, super question from Brittany, for example, how do you explain to someone unfamiliar with what a walk-in experience is? I can only explain to people I think are open to the concept. I'd imagine the family may have found this a challenge to believe. Maybe they were okay and fully understood. Fascinating. No, they totally did not understand, and they didn't know, they didn't know what was going on with me. So in honesty, like they should have been able to comprehend from the eye doctor that your eyesight doesn't just magically change 2 diopters overnight. So that happens from a brain injury. But they were not able to recognize and validate that. And I did not receive a neurological assessment until like 5 or 6 years after that. And that was long after the fact. And I had already done a lot of my own neurological, neuroplasticity, singing and, visualizing in ways of being able to kind of reconstruct myself. But I had zero help and zero recognition of those efforts. But it should have been obvious because your eyesight doesn't change that much overnight from nothing. Um, so they weren't really able to comprehend that or to validate that, even though there was some measurable materialistic expression of what I had been through in my body. But it was just such a forbidden topic. Like it was just a can of worms that I knew that I could not talk about with them effectively. And so that was when I was like, how do I work this washing machine? Like I couldn't say everything to them. And it was actually many, many years before I could be fully myself in explaining what I had been through, and still huge amounts of lack of acceptance and misinterpretation there, and a lot of projection also upon my motivations, because I'm a very hardworking person with nothing but the greatest integrity and intentions. But there were many times when I was not fully functional and could not, fend for myself effectively in the world. Like now I do clearly, but in those times I was not able to. And one of the big things, like I needed to have medical care that I was not receiving at the time. And eventually I didn't even know about it. I didn't know about your medical system either. I thought that all you had to do was go to a doctor and say, doctor, I'm not feeling well, and that the doctor will figure things out for you and then give you effective medicine. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Like you're laughing. Ah, ha, ha, ha. That's so quaint. No, that's not how it works here. No, if you do that, you will get the worst medical care. So I had to learn about my condition and figure out what it was, and then go to a doctor and have a proposal and say what type of treatment I would like to have. So I had to learn about my brain. I had to learn about what epilepsy was. People in my life did not know or comprehend what seizures were. They did not know how to distinguish between seizures and, merely bad behavior or psychiatric problems or other things. And, I'm not the first epileptic in the world to have been falsely or erroneously presumed to have a psychiatric problem. Van Gogh also had epilepsy and was thought to simply be a madman. And epilepsy can be more than just grand mal seizures. It can present as emotional instabilities and inarticulation, like not being able to speak about your experience, and a lot of other things that just make it possible for a lot of misprojection that now you guys know me. Again, I am articulate and neurologically stable. I don't have seizures very often, but when I did have them, it made it very difficult for me to articulate, like to say, like, this is what has just happened to me. Like, it's not like having a broken leg, or you could say to someone like, oh yes, my leg is injured and hurts me now, because you have a disarrangement in your brain. And for me specifically in my language centers, I couldn't articulate and explain what I was experiencing to people. So they simply thought that I was acting in a strange, erroneous, or unimaginable way. They couldn't comprehend why I was acting the way that I was. And it was 100% due to epileptic seizures. And I didn't know anything about food. So I didn't know how much food affects epilepsy, specifically carbohydrates. And so I'm not fully ketogenic. I've never been fully ketogenic, but like I was doing that keto stuff before it became a big fad, because I learned in like 2006 or so, as I started to go to doctors and go into the medical industry, and I started to really get more support from fellow patients, that we didn't have Facebook or really even anything at that time. But my friend had given me that computer, which became a portal to the world for me. And I was able to go on some of these message boards that are patient support groups for epilepsy. And that's when I started to learn about my symptoms. I'm like, I knew that I did not have a mental problem, but that these are things that other people experience too, who have epilepsy. Look at that. And I learned about all these things. And that's when I started to learn how diet is really important. And I told you, I didn't know anything. I just knew food goes in here. And I didn't know anything about recipes. And my friend, I think in 2006, had just shown me this documentary about genetically modified organisms and organisms and why you want to stay away from them. And that's when I started to realize like corn is in everything, and they put corn syrup in everything, and it's genetically modified, and I don't want that. And then I also learned corn syrup is sugar. And I don't want to have sugar in my brain because that definitely exacerbates all of these symptoms. So that was the beginning of me learning that I needed to limit sugar. And I also started to limit like bread, pasta, carbohydrates, all of those types of things, rice, beans, fillers, all that stuff, and eat much more selectively. So like I said, not fully ketogenic because it's actually very difficult to maintain that metabolic state in the body, but to be very limited in my ingestion of carbohydrates. And that was one of the things I had to do. And in truth, family members, of the previous occupant, they didn't comprehend that or support that at all because they are very much like a junk food family, and they do not really know or respect like why I didn't want to eat sugar or why I didn't want to eat things that were at their family gatherings. So that was, actually a little bit painful because now it's recognized and validated. But back then it was just seen as like another, mystifying weirdness from me. But now it's like, no, like there's a reason why we shouldn't be eating these things. But regular people shouldn't be eating these things. Definitely epileptic people shouldn't be eating these things. So I only then started to learn how to care for my body and do the things that I needed to do through diet. But it took a long time. I eventually went through all of these medical assessments and MRIs and things like that, and really had to fight hard through the medical system to go to an epilepsy specialist, an epileptologist. They are so protected in the medical field. Like you can't get an appointment. It's so hard to get your foot in the door to be able to get to one of these guys. So again, I had to go through all of this song and dance to be able to even get to the right doctor. And then once I did, I had to advocate for a particular medicine so that way I was able to find one that had the least side effects, because all of these epilepsy medicines have like the worst side effects. And I've read all about them and learned all about them from the other patients. And I'm like, don't want that one, don't want that one, because you got to take something. Because like, okay. I had all sorts of different types of seizures, not grand mal seizures, but complex seizures, simple partial seizures, and other forms of temporal lobe epilepsy. The worst type of seizure that I had is a nocturnal seizure that I could not effectively achieve dream state, which is where you actually like rest in your dreams. That as soon as I would go into certain levels of like dreaming, there would be a conflict in my brain, and my brain would wake up again. And so I started to have severe sleep deprivation, where like I wouldn't sleep for many days at a time. And like, you can't do that. It is definitely not good for the body. And it's not good for your mind, your outlook, your emotional stability, like all of those things. I was so distressed by not being able to really get effective sleep. And I painted a lot, believe me. I painted all the time and did all sorts of different art projects and all these different things, and worked at my job as being a custom framer. But if you can't sleep and you don't sleep for a long amount of time, it is very detrimental to your mental health, emotional health, psychological outlook, everything. So I had to find something that would make it better for me, because otherwise it would have just continue to whatever, like make it through my day as best I could. But the unhealed seizures got to a point in my brain where I had to do something. And so I tried all these different prescription medications. And then, like I told you, I finally tried one from this one doctor. And they're like, well, it may give you a rash that's like as bad as a 3rd-degree burn, but as long as you don't get that, should be okay, right? This is the truth. This is the truth. Some of these drugs, you can have a allergic reaction to them. That's like your skin will fall off. But as long as your skin doesn't fall off, you will be okay. And just have a yearly liver test. So that was the one I ended up taking. It's like I took it, and then they told me like, yeah, just watch, make sure your skin doesn't fall off. I'm like, what? And then I was okay. I survived. I only had a moderate rash. So I just lived with like a moderate rash for about 7 years. And I took that medication. And then I also, I will tell you the side effects weren't as bad as other drugs, but it definitely, the medication, it diminishes your cognitive ability, diminishes your creative ability. It just brings everything down in the brain. And I was not fully vibrant, fully emotional, fully connected in the world. I was always slightly diminished from taking that, but it did help to control the seizures. And I needed to do something so that way my head didn't explode. And also, this is why I'm not allowed to drink caffeine. Yes. But eventually, I learned that I could have a better quality of life by doing something, by taking CBD, which is a cannabis derivative. And that was in like 2012 or 2013 or so. And it was very expensive and unusual back then. Now you can get CBD at regular gas stations. It's like $5, CBD pre-rolls and all these different things. It's like, no, back then CBD was like this very, very weird, unusual thing that no one knew about. And there's this one little girl that was epileptic. They used it to save her life. And I read this article about her. And I was so inspired. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And I told that to people in my life. And they said, you're not allowed to do that. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm gonna get this medicine and I'm gonna go off of all of these regular pharmaceutical medicines. Because when you take regular pharmaceutical medicines, they tell you, like, you must take this for your whole entire life. Like, they don't give you an option of like, oh, one day you'll get better and you won't need this. Like, that is not a part of their playbook for you. They're like, you will have to take this for forever. And so I was like in the medical system, and that also means that you're like very beholden to your insurance. And there's always all these back bends to maintain my insurance. My insurance was incredibly high, and the cost of the pharmaceuticals was incredibly high. So I was spending thousands of dollars every month just to be able to afford this anti-epilepsy medicine that gave me, like a decent quality of life. But I was like, I want something more in my life. And I advocated for myself, and the people in my life at that time thought that I was way off base because they thought, like, you can't do this. You can't go off of your medications. You can't move to California. You can't just drink cannabis juice and think that you're going to be okay. And I'm like, I am going to do all of those things. All right. And so that's what I did. So here's where the story gets good. All right. I had friends of friends, friends of friends of friends. We won't mention their names, but they put me in touch with some people in California. I was living in upstate New York, and they put me in touch with some people in California who were cannabis growers. And they did all sorts of questionable things in how they actually sold their cannabis. I won't speak about it. It's not my position at all. But I went and I worked there as a farm laborer. I worked on a farm. So my friends of friends of friends set me up with these people that had this grow. And I went out there. I had someone take care of my cat in Woodstock so that I could be away for several months. And then I lived as an itinerant farm worker, and I went from farm to farm. And this is me with epilepsy and dietary restrictions and lots of spinal cord issues. I slept on the floor in a sleeping bag like everyone else. And we used an outhouse and did not have electricity, and spent 18 hours a day just trimming cannabis. I used scissors so much, I did actually get a repetitive motion injury in my hand that for many years meant that I couldn't use scissors effectively. I had to like rest my hand, but I used my hand so much, I like used it up. Yeah, cut a lot of weed, and doing that allowed me to get together enough money to create my moving expenses so I could move myself from upstate New York to Northern California. And that was what I did. I worked hard on a farm, several farms actually, for several months, living in very unglamorous conditions. And you get paid by the pound. So that means that you just have to work really, really hard and make sure that you meet your quotas. And luckily, I got paid in all of those situations. And I was pretty safe to didn't have anybody, being shady or assaulting me or anything like that. And then I went back to Woodstock and packed up all of my art pieces that I had made in my studio and moved across the country. And then I did follow my dream. I immediately started a cannabis CBD garden with the help of a wonderful garden club of these old ladies with long white hair that were all growing CBD for health. And they were also like, don't be with any of these weird black market people. Like, be with us, because the weird black market people are all up there in Humboldt County. And they were like protective of me. They were like, here's CBD plants. Here's how you grow them without chemicals. Do this thing, here, and do this thing here. Don't talk to those people over there. They've got machine guns. I'm like, okay, I will listen. Because again, it's still extremely innocent, even at that time, 2013 or so, when I moved out here to California. But that was really the beginning of my neurological healing. Like, up until that time, I was like cobbled together, like barely even in my body, amazingly functional for what was going on in my body, but not really doing well. And it wasn't until I came to California and I started an intensive regimen of drinking raw cannabis juice every day, and then using the CBD, because I was able to have access to those tinctures, which at that time they were not in gas stations and easily available, but now they are. And my brain really started to heal. And I went off of all of the pharmaceutical medications and was celebratory to do that, because I finally felt like my true self again and felt clear in my mind. And yeah, as soon as I got CBD, my brain started to really heal. And that was when I really started to be able to do music, like playing with my left hand and my right hand at the same time, writing my own music, expressing myself more. My artwork evolved. I started to really do my teaching online very effectively. And it's why I taught on Zoom for so many years, because I didn't drive for many years, because I was always in danger of having epileptic seizures. So I had to find a way to be able to be a part of the world, even though I couldn't drive to an office job. That was a huge limiter for me. And now everybody does Zoom, and there's tons of remote work, and it's not a limiter for me. Ironically, I now drive. But back then, I drove very minimally, like once a week to the grocery store and back. And there weren't that many opportunities for me in the professional world. And I used to feel very limited and wish that I could do things that other people do and kind of take for granted. Like, oh yeah, you drive to your job every day. So when I realized, like, okay, I'm going to have to make my class online, and that way I don't have to drive anywhere. Because like, if you have epilepsy, you never know, like, when are you going to have a seizure? How is it going to affect your life? So you can't have a commitment where you're like, yeah, I'm going to drive there. And the night before you have a seizure, and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't be on the road today because I just had a seizure last night and now I can't drive to this commitment. So I had to find a way to structure my life so that I could have a career, be professional, and do all of this without driving. And that was what I eventually did. So I lived in Northern California for a little while, and then it was not very sunny at all. And I learned, if you want sunny California, you want Southern California. I eventually moved to Southern California, and then here I set up my life so that I'm like within walking distance of a grocery store, within walking distance of most of the things in my community, most amenities that I would need. And then also I could do all of my teaching remote via Zoom. And that was what I did for many, many years. And even though it took many, many years, my brain got better and kept on getting better. But I still would have, like, vulnerabilities. Like if I ate too many cacao nibs, that could be a seizure trigger because they've got some caffeine in there. Like, there are all these different things that, like, if I didn't get enough rest, if I didn't drink enough water, if I didn't have enough electrolytes, if I didn't have enough this, if I didn't have enough that, all these things that could be a seizure trigger. So I always had to live in a way that was like, okay, like, I got to keep my ship like perfectly balanced, keep my body perfectly balanced, and don't do too much of this and don't do too much of this. And then I can be functional and I can be here. So that's what I did for many, many years. And like I said, when the pandemic happened, then Zoom became so normal for everyone. And then I didn't feel so limited. And now there's many, many remote jobs, and it's normal to do that. And then also now my brain has healed so much that it's not scary for me to have to drive on the highway or longer distances, because I'm not afraid that I'm going to have a seizure. Like, I haven't had a seizure in over a year. And also, Cheeky was originally my service animal. and I adopted her specifically to be a seizure alert dog. And she was there for me when I needed her, when my brain was much more unstable. And when I had seizures on a much more regular basis, Cheeky did an awesome job of protecting me and informing me of when a seizure was going to happen. And she, she's been amazing. When my brain started to heal, like really get better, then it was like she was kind of out of a job. And I remember like I reached this one critical milestone. I hadn't had a seizure for a year. And I said to Cheeky, well, like now you're in semi-retirement because you don't always have to be so focused on me. You can now be more of like, just a friendly companion and enjoying going around and just having fun in life. And she is like, she had to kind of change and recalibrate because she's still very, very attentive to me. Like she's used to being with me all the time, being focused on me all the time, sensing my body chemistry, smelling me, making sure that I'm okay. And she still waits for me. Like if I close the bathroom door, she waits right outside the bathroom door. She's like, I'm just going to wait right here until you come out just to make sure that you're okay. And so she's still the training is very deep and her loyalty is very deep to me. And, Shiki's not just like a piece of medical equipment. Like if you heal your leg and you outgrow your crutches, just be like, oh yeah, like stick them in the garage. But like my dog is a dog, like she's a living creature. You can't just, discard her or whatever. So I made a very clear promise to Cheeky that even though my brain is so much better now and I can do so much more, I'm not just gonna like leave her home for 8 hours a day alone. So now whenever I have worked at many different jobs outside of my home now, and whenever I go on a job interview, I bring Cheeky with me. And I say, yeah, Cheeky's going to be a coworker here. And she's part of the team. And she's interviewing along with me. I call her my boss or my supervisor. And everybody that I've worked for has loved this. And it's not only not prevented me from landing a job, I think Cheeky helped me to get the job many times. And then she's been one of the best little workers ever because she loves going in the CAR for work. And then she loves getting paid, usually in small pieces of ham in the lunchroom by whoever is our boss, sometimes small pieces of cheese. So she's great, like receives her salary, her payment. And then also, sometimes when other people are having a rough day at work, she can tell from their voice and she goes right up to them, like maybe they're frustrated with their emails or whatever it is. She goes right up to them. She's like, look, just hug me. Hug me. I'm a dog. I'll make you feel better. And so she ends up becoming like everybody's fun companion. And she's just very amazing and socially attentive and emotionally giving. So all of the training that I did with Cheeky for her to be attentive to me and to my needs and make sure that I'm okay. Now that I don't need so much daily care, she's like, we're gonna have to go out there and help other people. So sometimes we work outside of the home. Right now I'm focused on my own projects and I don't have a job outside of my home. And then what we do every day, Cheeky has to get out there and see people because she needs to feel like she's uplifting someone. So we might go to a store or to the post office, but she needs to be like, I'm doing something to help people. I'm doing at least one good thing every day. So Cheeky has a very strong work ethic in service. And every day we find someone who needs a hug or someone who needs something. And she's so giving and sharing of herself. Philip says, your story reminds me of how a child enters the world very much. And I was doing that in chronological adulthood, but very much so. He goes on to say, slowly seeing visual cues, exactly, usually with social amnesia, and learning from them and singing songs to understand like you did, although you were launched into the matrix and had to adapt super quick. Wow. Yeah. All of my milestones and developments, they're all directly analogous to the things that you guys experienced as native born people. I had to learn about time. I had to learn about scheduling, like getting someplace on time. I had to learn about subtext and emotional cues. I learned a lot through singing and that little sing-song voice and kind of using music as a mnemonic device. I had to learn about responsibility. That's when you say, like, yes, I will be there on Tuesday. You have to be there on Tuesday. And like, building your reputation and all of the things that it is to construct yourself as a person, including things like, these are my likes and my dislikes. I had to learn, like, these are the flavors of whatever ice cream or something that I like. These are the things that I don't like. Actually, I don't eat a lot of junk food, so I don't have like, what's your favorite M&M flavor? Like, I don't have one through this because I don't really eat that stuff. But I had to learn, like, what are the things that make me me? What are my choices? What are the things that I favor and that I prefer? And what are the things that I would never buy or do or use because it's just totally not me. Philip says, custom framing job is like a metaphor for how the job helped give you a frame of reference for living life in US. Totally. What a beautiful decoding of that. I totally agree, Phil. It's very apt. Yeah, it was actually, I think, although really a sink or swim situation, I think, and like a big cosmic joke too, but a necessary stage of my development because I did need to have some kind of position where I just had a sampling of humanity. And so, I did just interact. I didn't only interact with one type of person. By being a custom framer, I met everyone, you know, all different sorts of ages, demographic groups, and types of people, and learned more about their social emotional presence and what was important to them. And I developed a sense of the world. Like met some people who were had small economic capacities. Because remember, I had to do the write-ups for everyone. So if I say to some people, "Oh, you want to frame your sad clown painting?" Okay, blah blah blah, and it's going to be $112.89 to get this framed. Would you like to do that? And some people would say, "No, that is too much money," and they would take their clown painting and they would go somewhere else. And some people would say, "Only $112, fantastic. I'll do it." And so I learned about your social and economic caste system. I learned there's this one lady. So this is like, here's a good story. I won't say exactly who it is. There's a lady who is the wife of a very well-known and prominent scholar that came into where I was framing in Woodstock. And they had an immediate overnight urgency because they had all of these Tibetan mandalas and archival quality scrolls that needed to be displayed for a particular retreat center in the Bearsville area. And it was in preparation for a lama who was going to be visiting their area. So they had to have all this stuff up. And someone had done the framing and they had done a very poor job of it. So they came in one day I came into work and there's just all of these boxes, kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, all of these crates, and they're crowbarred open with all of these lined up frames in there. And my boss is like, "Yep, you have a emergency job to do. You're going to be framing for this guy." And I knew the person's name and that they were well known in the world of, almost celebrity, being a scholar of that level. But anyway, his wife was there. All right. And she was a very elegantly dressed lady who, by that point, I was, adept enough to be able to determine this. And I'm having this whole conversation with her about what needs to be done on the frames, supplies, materials, and cost. And again, I'm very literal and forthright, and I'm not about like Hollywood stuff and social presence or whatever, fawning over celebrities. And so I was like, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you, blah, blah. Oh, yes, well, let me do your estimate. It's going to be blah, blah. It's going to be this much money, and it's going to take this much time." And she was like, "Oh, no, darling, no, it cannot take that long. It has to be faster." And she had this giant diamond ring. And I just remember she kind of like waved her diamond ring at me. And she was like, "It has to be faster." And I was kind of like that I've never had someone wave their diamonds at me before. This is very interesting. But I tried to gently explain to her, like, even if you wave your diamonds at me, like, this is how long it's going to take to do that. I said, I will try to expedite it as much as I possibly can. But that was the first time that I had experienced like that attitude, the human caste system, money, and different people and how they act in the way they do. I'm going to get to more of your questions and comments, but since I mentioned the lady who waved her diamonds at me, let me also mention a a foil to that story, the balancing element to that story. So this is, before I had purchased my electric piano here that I play on, make all my music with, right? And I had always had musical aspirations. You know, I loved my karaoke, but I didn't yet have a musical instrument or any training at that point. And this one lady, a different lady, came in who was also an elegantly dressed older lady. And I was talking with her about her framing project. And I was doing her estimate, and we had like this big giant mat cutter. And I was telling her, well, it's going to be blah, blah, this much. And if it's this big, and I put my hands out on the mat cutter to kind of gesture for her. And she looked at my hands. She said, my darling, do you play the piano? And I was like, no, I would love to learn, though. It's a lifelong dream of mine. She said, you simply must learn to play the piano. She said, if I were younger, I'd teach you myself, but I'm just not the player that I once was, you know, many, many other things. And she had a beautiful air of elegance about her. And she also taught me that it's not pronounced jewelry, it's pronounced jewelry. Because I said something about the jewelry. She says, no, 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 my dear, it's jewelry. And I was like, oh, okay. And from that comment of her encouraging me from the length and breadth of my hands to get the piano, that I was like, I'm going to get a piano. I went home, I was walking home from that day from work, and I'm like, I'm going to get a piano. And I went on eBay and I shopped for a used electric piano. And it was a big investment for me at the time. It was like $300, which was a lot for me at the time. And I bought that, and I have never regretted it. Like, if someone ever asks you, like, purchase in your life that you most regret, purchase in your life that you least regret, like big purchase or whatever like that, I will tell you, I will never regret getting that first instrument. Life changing, life affirming, and really an incredible step on the journey to who I ended up becoming here today as a musician. And a lot of it was from just that one person giving me that little push and that little encouragement, because I had had really no one in my life who recognized my potential and encouraged me in exploring it. And that one little kindness made such a giant impact on me. And so, yeah, I got an electric piano and I set it up at home, and I put it in a place where I thought like no one would hear me when I'm playing, because I was very insecure, because I was like, I don't know anything and I'm not good. And I simply played along as best I could. Couldn't read music. I just played along as best I could with songs that I liked, mostly John Coltrane, who's an artist that I still love and adore and admire greatly. And so I would just have his music on repeat while I was making my artwork. And then I would internalize a song, and then I would go to the piano and I would just try to play and make something that sounded even remotely like that. And I did that for many years. And actually, at a certain point, I learned a little bit more. And then I was like, okay, I moved my piano from like the hidden zone where I had been playing to my art studio area, still in Woodstock, which was definitely more socially overt, because it was kind of in a more high traffic area. We're kind of right near the street, and people could kind of hear me through the window a little bit, and then was playing there a little bit too. But all of that was before I got CBD and before I was really able to explore my love of music. And once I got CBD, my mind exploded in a positive way. My mind unfolded, I should say. It's very much like some nonverbal autistic children. Like, once you give them CBD, they start to talk. Like, they start to make these connections in their brain that are so profound that it like capacitates them. And that was me. It gave me so much capacitation. Not only that I wasn't having seizures that were so disruptive, because when you have a seizure, like, you forget everything that's important. It disrupts your memory. So if you learn a song, you're like, I'm doing great, I learned a song, then you have a seizure, then you're like, I cannot remember the song, because it all got disarranged in the disruption and the aftermath of the seizure. And also, when your brain is inflamed in the aftermath of a seizure, it's really, really hard to learn new songs and make new music. So getting CBD and then having neurological stability and then being able to explore music was this great, amazing, unfolding gift. And that I'm still in that process. And I'm still in the process of growth and development and, growing as a musical artist. Melly, nice, thank you for being here, says, why did you choose this specific body? This is a beautiful question. We'll go for another half hour, okay? Because it's a long question. Why did you choose this specific body? She says, genetic reasons, DNA, or other factors. Thank you for all your sharings. Sending you love and gratitude for being here and committing to teaching us all. You're so welcome. Thank you for that beautiful recognition. You know, I'll get to your question, but I'll also tell you that of all the challenges of being here and having like the neurologically damaged body and all of these things, like having lack of recognition of what I was going through, I think was more painful than having, you know, challenges in my body or neurological disruptions or headaches and things like that. Just the fact that you're Nelly, you, and also many of the beautiful people in my classes, that you're like always expressing gratitude and recognition towards me. It means the world to me. It is just, I'm in such a completely different level of interactivity with humanity now than I was before. I used to feel very, very isolated and very underappreciated. And I felt like, yeah, like no one knows who I am or what I'm doing or cares. And that was very, you know, I felt very outcast. And now I feel like I have a beautiful community of people who are so loving and who are so caring about me and know about my journey. And like I said, genuinely care about who I am and what I've experienced to be here. Like that, it just means the world to me. And so I thank you, Melly, and thank you to the very many people that have given me like support, recognition, encouragement, acknowledgement. It means everything to me. It really does. I say Gatorade on the marathon really helps me to keep going. So to answer your question, I am tangentially connected to the conception, the original occupant of this body, in that there were some fertility issues that would not have made it possible for the body to be conceived without some nudging. And in my otherworldly state as Aurora, I helped to nudge materials to come together so that the original occupant of this body could be formed. But that does not in any way mean that I felt a proprietary ownership over the life of the woman who was here. I helped her to be born. I helped her to have an optimum genetic combination of mother and her father so that she could be here. And, you know, pretty much planted a seed and then hands off. Let that person be who they are. All right. So it wasn't just a completely random stranger. It was someone whose life I had already had an impact on. But because of my value system and promoting everything about free will and consent, I simply allowed her to live her life in freedom and self-determination the way that a person should, with no proprietary ownership or thinking that that's my life or that's my body or anything like that. And when she was being destroyed, I saw what was going on. And of course, I was very emotionally connected to the injustices of her death, but I also saw that the injustices of her death would have caused huge instabilities in the fabric, in the integrity of the fabric of space-time. And that for me to know about that and not do something about that would be a great indifference and irresponsibility of me as a cosmic individual. And so I intervened and took on this life by doing something that is considered to be impossible in creating the flying rainbow lasagna and coming into this body. So to synopsize, we had a connection that was not necessarily a soul contract or any kind of thing that is that well delineated, but certainly someone to whom I was initially connected and cared about. But that the choice to come into her body was completely spontaneous as a space-time saving, not life-saving, but a space-time saving or whatever supportive activity that was completely necessary. And also, I don't know when people talk about being a walk-in and walking in and walking out, and some people are questionable. Let me just drink some of my wonderful methylene blue here. Hold on a second. Some people, when I tell them I'm a walk-in, they're like, oh yeah, I've been a walk-in 17 times. I'm like, 17 times? They're like, yeah, this guy walked in and he walked out, and this guy walked in and he walked out, and this guy walked in and he walked out, like, saying that their body has been like Grand Central Station with all of these spirits or people walking into them. I don't know how truthful that is, but I will say that from my experience, being a walk-in is a complete commitment. It's not something easy like just putting on a set of snow boots or something like that. Put on your boots and lace them up and you're ready to go snowboarding. No, it actually takes years, sometimes decades, to really integrate into the physical structure of the body. So it's not a capricious or easy choice. And it's not the type of thing that can be done for convenience. And it's not the type of thing that can be done where you just kind of pop in and out. So here's a very poignant story, okay? I have a friend, she's a beautiful person. She passed on. She was a troubled person too. She had some DUIs at the end of her life, and I think that it really contributed towards the end of her life because she died of cancer. But what happened was she was facing real jail time because she had had all these DUIs. And she called me up one time. I had already moved to California. And she was like, look, I want to do the walk-in thing. In case I have to go to jail, I want to walk out of my body and have someone else walk into my body. And then they can live in me while I'm in jail. And then when I get out of jail, I can walk back into my body. And I was like, it does not work that way. And like, we can laugh about it, but that is not, you can't hack the system. You can't game the system. You have to take responsibility for what you've done, and that you can't use being a walk-in as kind of like a cheat or a way to get around responsibility. And also, it's not that easy. Like, once someone integrates with the body and fuses their soul inside of here, it's just not that easy, like to get in and to get out. So it's a big deal, not a small deal. And it's not something that can be done for capricious circumstances or ego purposes, or like I joke, for being on a sightseeing tour, not here on a pleasure cruise. It's done for deep purposes and for very specific assignments. Brittany says, thank you so much, Aurora. Such powerful shares. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for listening. And Lan says, Aurora, your journey is an incredible story. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for recognizing that. It really is. I'm open to a few more questions if you want to just do like maybe 10 or 15 more minutes of talking here. But I'll tell you, like, where I am in my life now, I didn't have this conversation with you, you might not necessarily know the very steep incline that I had to climb up in order to get to where I presently am. So I'm happy to do this level of, really sharing about everything that I've been through, because it's a very, very rocky road. I faced enormous levels, the insurmountable odds, tons of impossibilities. And I also had like very, very minimal resources and minimal social support in the beginning. And had to effort very, very much, like effort level 11 on a scale of 10 to be able to accomplish the things that I've accomplished. So I'm really pleased that you guys are able to see me in this stage of my journey where like I'm well established as a visual artist. I'm well established now as a musician. You guys know, like, I can really paint things. I can really sing and make music. And even my ideas and the concepts that I share with you, I'm validated as a teacher all the time and have a wonderful student body. But there was a time before all of that. There was a time when I was just an artist, even before I had a studio. I was just making artwork in my little tiny studio apartment. I didn't even have like a painting area. Like, I just had my bed, and then I used all of my available space for making artwork. Including sometimes I had turned my bed into like a sculpture stand. That was a time I was like, this hadn't yet been, like I hadn't yet demonstrated all the things that I had inside of me that were potentials, that were very real potentials in there, but other people didn't yet see them or know about them. So I felt like, yeah, like I'm living in obscurity and I contain all of this cosmic information. Like I've always been a library connected to the intelligence of the cosmos. And sometimes I have been like, how like this giant cosmic library, and I'm just here in this, tiny apartment. And nobody knows about me, and I live in Nowheresville. Like sometimes I really felt like that, and I always felt like I had to strive in order to be able to bring my message to a greater audience and to interact with more people. And times in my life when I wasn't driving, I felt like that was a huge impediment. I always felt like how am I going to meet people and tell them about my work and teach them about flying river lasagna if I can't drive places? And same thing with like sharing my artwork and things like that. So it's been a lot for me to be able to find how to effectively share my message. And also, now I'm much more healthy and capable than I was in other times. So now I just don't have those same levels of things holding me back. But I used to think like, how could I be a part of an art show? Like, how could I make something happen? Those things always felt like this. They always felt like out of reach. Like, oh, if only I could get there. If only I could do that. Yeah, and I used to really long for a sense of like recognition that someone would be like, oh, like you're an interdimensional visitor. Well, tell me all about everything that you know, because I'm curious and would like to learn, like that would have been my dream. So I'm just always so pleased and grateful that I have been able to find and generate and attract around me a wonderful group of people who are students and enthusiasts who are interested in what I have to share and who know that I am intellectually present. I'm going to get to your questions. First, let me just share a few more fun stories. Because like I used to walk around Woodstock, right? Like wearing a cowboy hat and wearing all sorts of like crazy outfits and things like that. And I'm, like this whatever skinny girl with long hair. And I think that they way underestimated me. I think that people didn't even know about whatever neurological challenges I was facing. I think that people were totally judging me on my appearance and objectifying me. And they had no idea of what my intellectual abilities were and that I'm a cosmic library, right? No idea. And I used to try to kind of like get people to comprehend that. And, I would show them like my notebooks or something like that. And I remember this one guy who was like this older dude, kind of creepy older dude. And he looked at my notebooks and then he looked at me and he was like, well, that's what's been going on in that pretty little head of yours. And that was like the first time I think that I really realized like, oh, like this person was miscalibrated and underestimating me based entirely upon my appearance and my gender. And I was like, oh, that's what's going on here. Like I didn't even really comprehend that. I'm just like, I'm a cosmic library. Like, here's information, everyone. And I didn't even understand, like, oh, like that guy's not going to listen to me just based on how I look or just based on his projections or expectations. And then I thought, like, maybe I should dress differently or, act differently or I need to change. I thought I need to change in order to get more recognition and more validation. And then I had to learn, like, after a whole long journey, I'm like, no, you don't need to change, but you do need to effectively find better people that have a better standard for being able to know about you. So, what was actually really profoundly, positively life-changing was when that same friend who had the DUIs, she knew that I wanted to go to this math art conference that I had heard about that was about art that make for math. And I was like, yeah, I want to go to this thing, but I'm feeling really not so confident because I'm like, this is me in like 2007 or 2008. Like, I'm not good at math and I don't know anything. And I'm afraid that they're all going to laugh at me and, say I should jump out a window. And my friend was like, no, you have to go. And she actually helped me to afford my plane ticket to be able to go to this international math art conference. And that was one of the best things that I ever did, because I got out of that small town mind state of like creepy guys that are looking at me and projecting and objectifying on me. And I went into the world of um, academics and intellectuals. And that was the first time that I really got a sense of the potentials that are here in this world of like some of the best humans and the best human thinkers. I went to this place that was like a summer camp training zone for people with really great minds. And I was not only, did they not laugh me out of the room, but they were really interested in what I had to share. And I totally recalibrated because I was like, wow, there is a whole world outside of Woodstock. There is a whole world of people who do things differently, know more, have greater levels of aesthetics and appreciation, and can are even prepared to recognize and receive my message and what I have to give. And I gained so much from that. And that was, I told you, my friend had loaned me a computer. I went to that math art conference and my mind expanded so positively. And there were all these guys there who are computer scientists. And, they're doing things with like sacred geometry and animations and 3D printing. This was 2008. So this was very cutting edge stuff. And I was like, I need to get a computer. That was like my cosmic assignment, what I got out of that experience. Because up until that point, I had been thinking like, oh, computers are these extremely fancy, expensive objects that are for people other than me. Human caste system, lady with her diamonds, right? And then I'm like, you know something? Computers are amazing art making tools that I need to get one. And so that was my journey from there. I was like, I need to get access to a computer and I need to learn these Photoshop programs and to learn these animation programs and to learn all these things. So that was the next thing that I did, a wonderful level of self-education as it comes down to using computers for making art and 3D printing and things like that. And then yet many, many years, but eventually I became very good with computers and very adept with them and using the technology. But boy, that was a steep incline as well. And the steep part was not even just like intellectually how to learn something, because although I do have a lot of brain damage, I'm really good at learning stuff. And I didn't say this enough about my journey with my body, but a lot of what I do is I use my higher dimensional self for my real memory and processing power. So I joke about using the cloud. Like now you have iCloud. And with iCloud, you can hold all of your documents on the cloud, not just in your phone, right? With my cloud, I hold all my information in the stars, not just in my brain here. So that's really been a huge saving grace for me, especially like in the past 5 years and the past since 2021, when they really attacked me very hard. They tried to wed my mind many times and it never worked because I store all of my information in the cloud, which is the stars. So they do something very disruptive to my brain. And then I'd be like, oh, let me just re-download everything that I know and I'd get it all back. I'd be like, sorry, I'm back. Yeah, that's my present level of difficulties. I came here with a huge uphill climb in terms of surmounting neurological difficulties. Now I have a huge uphill climb in facing like AI, wetware and other forms of technology and mind control stuff, but it's the same stuff you guys are facing too. So at least we're in the same boat. But yes, like how do I do my complex calculations? How did I transcend using a calculator? And the answer is I do my calculations with more than just the neurology of this brain. I bounce my signals between this body and the stars, and I'm able to use the entire processing power of the stars to be able to calculate and comprehend the answer to various questions. And I use the processing power a lot in my fight against wetware right now. I outclass force the technological contrivances that are trying to neurologically bergeron you and many, many others here. And I do that by using my cloud calculating capacities. So I store my information there. I use that for my calculation. And it's also how I'm a great learner. So like, how did I learn computer stuff? I watch things on YouTube. Again, I have excellent memory. So I watch tutorials, I learn things, and I store my information in my otherworldly higher dimensional format state. So in that sense, when I needed to learn something, like, mostly my challenges have been just in accessing resources. Because, I told you, like, getting a piano, that was $300. Like, that's a lot of money. Getting a computer, that was like $800. That's a lot of money. Things that held me back were mostly lack of access to physical human resources here. And because I didn't come here with a lot of money. Like, you don't travel interdimensionally with like a brick of gold that you can then sell and be like, oh, good, like now I've got a nice little amount of money to live off of. You don't have that. There's that movie from David Bowie, The Man Who Fell to Earth. And in the movie, he comes here and he's got gold wedding rings because he knows that he can go to pawn shops and sell them, and each one is going to give him like $20 worth of gold. I'm like, I did not come here with a bunch of gold prepared to go to pawn shops and translate it into food or whatever, pianos that I could use. I had to do hard stuff, like get a job and then save my money and then spend it on stuff. So the getting of stuff has also been a real challenge for me. I'm sure you can relate to it though in your own life. But then once I got the stuff, learning has been like celebratory, fun, cool part. I'm like, oh, cool, I get to learn about this now. Yeah, so I learned from all these computer scientists, and I'm like, I need to get a computer because I need to do stuff. And then I'm like, I need to learn about it. I'm going to teach myself. So I did all these tutorials and I learned about it. And now I'm pretty good at it. And that's an amazing thing. I did not come here thinking like, I'm going to get good at computers. Like, that wasn't what I thought my journey here would be like, but it has become that because it's part of the skill set that I needed to build in order to share my work in this cultural milieu. So I've picked up the skills that I needed to be able to learn and function here effectively. And then, once I master something, then it just becomes a joy, and it becomes, it's like every time you do something the first time, like when you were 3 years old and you tied your shoes, you're like, I did it myself. Hooray, go me. And I'm like, I have a lot of firsts like that. So, the first time that I figured something out on the computer, that I'm like, I did it myself, go me. Like, I downloaded a thing and I installed it. Yes, like I did it. Any of these things. And I want to encourage you in your own journeys at whatever chronological age you are. Like, you're never too old to celebrate a first. And when you do the thing and you do it for the first time successfully, you must celebrate it. And yeah, for me also, the first time I could run. So that was just last July when I had first gotten these Iva crystals about a year ago. And I've been working with them, kind of like keeping them on my knees, like in garters on my legs during the day, or like working with them to be able to bring the neurological signals all the way up and down my body. And did a lot of healing with these crystals. And so last year is when I started walking on a treadmill while I did my different videos and stuff. And I did that because my body asked me to, because my body said to me, like, I do not like sitting for 3 hours at a time. Can we please do something different? And I was like, well, yeah, like I'd way rather walk instead of sit. So that was when I got the treadmill, and balance had been a huge issue for me because I told you that I hadn't really been feeling like the bottoms of my feet. And so right now, like I don't have like a little bar or whatever, but it used to be like if I wanted to walk on a treadmill, I would have to hold on to something because I kind of couldn't tell like where I was in space. I was very floaty and I didn't have good balance. But I've also been working with this thing that is really wonderful, that this is a lovely friend sent this to me, who's been wonderfully supportive on my journey. So huge recognition and support to you, my friend, for sending me that. It's called a whole body vibration plate. And it is a platform that you stand on that vibrates. And it sends those vibrations all up and down your body. And there's different frequencies that you can put it on. And I started using that, and I was very cautious because they say if you have epilepsy, like you have to kind of watch out and make sure it doesn't trigger a seizure. But I did not have problems with it, and I worked with that very consistently for like a year and a half before I got my treadmill. And I'm telling you, it helped with the because I have injuries in the vestibular area of my brain, which is what balances, gives your balance, your sense of balance in space, and also your parietal lobe. So now you guys know all about my brain. Um, but I had a lot of difficulty with balance, but that whole body vibration plate really did help me to be able to improve my balance. Then I started walking on the treadmill while I do all of my video sharings. And then one day, this is what happened. This is how I kind of fool myself into achievements. I was like, it has a little remote. I'm like, well, like, what if I just go a little bit faster? Just press it one thing. I'm like, okay, I can do that. And then just go, if I just go a little bit faster, make it go a little bit faster. And then just make it go a little bit faster. And I just kept on making it go a little bit faster until I was like I'm kind of running. I'm kind of running. I'm kind of running. And I did that. And then I did that for like a mile. And then I stopped and I'm like, okay, I don't have to go that far. But I was like, I kind of ran for a mile. And that was a big, I did it myself moment. It's the first time I could run for a mile. And I had been here for over 20 years. And so what I do with my exercise regimen now is I alternate walking and running. I walk at slow speeds while I do all these videos, and I walk at faster speeds, when I'm walking my dog. And then I'll do, brief intervals when I can kind of run. And all of this is like just getting signals to go all the way down to my toes and get them to go fast enough to be able to do it. And now, I mean, I've run 5 consecutive miles. I don't run very fast, but I'm able to do it. And that is what matters. And also, I recently was going through emails from like 2017 because I had to find something in my email inbox. And I read this email from myself in 2017. And I was talking about the difficulties I was having at that point in my health journey. Like I used to have chronic head pain all the time because I have like a lot of vascular issues. There's a lot of scar tissue in my brain and a lot of places where it is just inherently uncomfortable, but that is normal for me. So it's like you deal with a certain amount of pain or discomfort, and that is just what is a normal day for you. But I used to not be able to do inversions, like to bend over, to be able to tie my shoes, or to do the downward dog yoga pose, or anything that put pressure on my brain, because it just used to be too difficult. And now I can do things like that. My brain has healed to the point where I'm not going to induce a seizure by having too much pressure in my brain. And one day I'll be able to do a handstand, like I do all of these push-ups and different exercises to build the upper body strength. And then, yeah, I can envision one day I will be able to do a full handstand. And it doesn't matter when it happens. I just know I'm on the journey to being able to do that. One day I'll be able to run 10 miles in a row. I'm on the journey to be able to do that. So the big takeaway that I have for all of you is that miraculous healings really do happen. Sometimes they unfold over a very, very epic, long amount of time, but that you just keep on showing up, being present, and doing the work. And then have these firsts that you have to celebrate. So what I do right now is I work with a yoga ball where I'm kind of like, tilted down, facing my head down towards the ground over the yoga ball with my legs kind of sticking up, but not yet, fully vertical, balanced in a handstand. But I could see, one day I'll be able to do that, and you just keep working towards it. And also, I didn't mention, I do a lot of things every day to be able to heal and realign my spine so that way I have better signal strength going up and down my body. So I do all of these stretches with the yoga ball and stretches with this total gym that I have here. Anything that lengthens the spine, anything where you're hanging from above, anything that kind of makes the thorax longer. I do all of these things, and that helps immensely as well. So wait, Sylvia, thank you for being here. Good to see you. Sylvia says, Aurora, thank you for being so vulnerable. I'm sorry for the feeling of being unseen you had. You're very important to lots of us. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Plugin. Thank you for that. And again, it means the world and feels so good now to be seen and recognized. And I only have to articulate it to you so that you guys get the full view of what I've been through. I don't carry it as a burden. I don't carry it as a trauma. It is what I went through then. And I'm so pleased that that era of feeling like an outcast or living in obscurity is over. And that now I feel very, very seen and very celebrated. And I know that I have a lot of people in my corner looking out for me, got my back, fighting for me, and also really appreciating the message and the work that I bring forward. That means everything to me because it does take a lot to keep going and do my classes every week and to do all these videos and sharings that I do. Hugely important to me that I know that I'm having an impact and really, really doing something. So Lan, thank you for that very much, Sylvia. And Lan says, do you feel confident to be able to prevent another event as violent as the one you had in 2004 with spine injury? Yes, but only in the sense that now I know what the F is going on and I know what I have to protect myself from. So I will tell you guys, I am really not trained in hand-to-hand combat. I'm really not a black belt of karate or anything like that, who carry any deadly weapons or anything. But I can set verbal boundaries, which is what I did not used to be able to do. I didn't know how to do it and I didn't know how necessary it was. But a lot of things now, what I can do is protect myself from being in certain situations and to be able to use my voice to prevent violence by being able to say, I don't want this, or I don't want you, or get the F away from me in that sense. That at that time in my life, I didn't know how to recognize dangerous situations, how to advocate for myself, how to use my voice, and how to get myself out of a place that I felt was unsafe. And now I have all of those life skills. So now I feel much less, likely to encounter that level of violence. But it was such a very, very difficult, like very damaging lesson to have to learn that, I'm still making good recovery from, but my back was not 100% perfect. So yeah, I didn't mention all the things that I do. I do lots of stretching, lots of back strengthening exercises, lots of back lengthening exercises. And then at the end of and I work with my healing crystals. And at the end of almost every day, I have a wonderful low EMF heating pad that I put up on my back as part of my going to sleep routine. So I do heat for my back and also infrared healing and also all sorts of CBD creams, topicals, melatonin. Like I do all these different things to be able to do all the different things that I do. But that was, it's not something that I talk about that much. And I might tell you the circumstances of it more going forward into the future. But it definitely one of the worst days of my life and one of the worst things that could possibly happen. I'm lucky that I survived it. And I didn't get medical care immediately after, which also, diminished my recovery. I think that things would have been a lot better if I had been able to receive some treatment right after the injury, but I didn't. And so things kind of just healed in like a not very ideal way, but I'm still like healing now and going forward now. Sylvia says, I have a question about discernment. Do you feel like something that is protecting you from evil when you were so new? I totally have had a ton of angelic and higher dimensional protection that has been protecting me, especially when I was very innocent and especially when I did not have good eyesight. Because I'm telling you, it's like if you could go back there and you would see, here's me like stumbling around, not being able to see, like, here's a rattlesnake, here's broken glass, here are the very worst things that can happen to you. And I'm like definitely being guided away from all of these things that I could have fallen into very, very easily. So, yeah, I feel like I had a ton of angelic protection, but I also had a ton of demonic assault and demonic interference. So at that time in my life, I was very vulnerable, not able to advocate for myself very much. And I very much felt both of those two sides of both light and dark fighting over me, and the dark side trying to do things to harm and diminish and kill me. And I felt the light side trying to protect and guide me very much. And what is different now is that now I still have the light side trying to protect and guide me, but I have me. I have me trying to advocate for myself, protect and guide myself, because now like I have eyesight, I can see things. And also I comprehend my cultural context. and I'm a lot wiser. And I know I didn't know about psychopathology thing, to answer Land's question too. Like I didn't know about psychopathology coming here. So if you don't know about poisonous snakes, you don't know that you have to protect yourself. But once you learn, like, oh, there's this thing called the poisonous rattlesnake. You cannot sit on that pile of rocks over there because there's a poisonous snake that lives in there. And if you do that, then you will endanger yourself. Just once you learn about that, be like, oh, I will stay away from them and stay away from there. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I stay away from now that I do so because I know that it's full of psychopaths. It's one of the things I'll tell you, the rainbow gatherings. It has the word rainbow in the title. And when I first came here, I thought like, oh, like these are going to be my people. Then I had to learn like, no, those gatherings are full of like psychopaths, dangerous people, substance abusers. You don't want to be there. And some people in my audience, they'd be like, no, the rainbow gatherings. Like, no, don't go to the rainbow gatherings. They're not good people. Sorry. But yeah, no, there's a lot of things in this world that are like not labeled correctly. And they have like rainbow on the surface. And you think like they're going to be great. And then you learn, no, like convicted felon. They're not actually that great. No, they're actually very dangerous people. So I had to learn about all of that mislabeling. And that's probably comparable to things that you experienced in your own early childhood when you maybe thought that some people were good or cool. And then you learned later by interaction that they were actually demonic or evil or very dangerous and nothing in the world that you wanted to be associated with. Aurelia says, I had to go and get dinner and come back. I must catch up. Means a lot to me to hear your walking stories, celebrating firsts. You got it, Aurelia, because I know that you can relate. So don't worry, this will all be archived. You can catch it later. And Aurelia says, your classes have made my week for the past 10 months. Thank you. Thank you. And I will keep going. Actually, I will tell you this, guys. I love being Professor Aurora so much. I love doing my weekly lecture series. Your Gatorade and encouragement helps me to keep going, but I will tell you that I totally feel like I am in alignment with my life's purpose whenever I am doing my class. And when I'm preparing for class, like I go over my notes, I go over my curriculum, I go over that, I am like in my most natural element, to tell you the truth. I'm totally feeling like it's not burdensome, it's not choreful, doing exactly what I want to do in the world, in this moment. And yes, if we didn't have our regular money system and all of those things, I would still do this just because it is what I do. That is who I'm supposed to be. And, I do my artwork and my music similarly, just as a very, very natural expression and unfoldment of who I am. And I would do them regardless of whether it was part of the money system or not. So those three things are just who I am in the world. And what I specifically love about being Professor, air quotes, Aurora, is that, like I told you, initially in being here, I had a lot of difficulty with articulation. And I had a lot of stuff inside of me that was really intelligent and that I wasn't able to share it and interface that effectively. And so I'll get to more questions and we'll keep going just a little bit further. I keep on saying like, we're going to end it, but then we go a little bit further. So I used to have this show. This was in Woodstock, a community access show that was called Planet Aurora. All right. And I love this too, because I started off originally being on this other lady's show. And she was a gallerist, well-known gallerist in town. And I was kind of like her, guest on her show. And she was on at like 11:30 p.m. at night. And I would go on there and so this would just be silly or talk about art stuff or whatever it was. But then there was an open time slot afterwards. So I would go on her show. Then we would segue because I was doing a segment on her show. And then she was like, something, you need your own show. We can just talk about the dynamics of that later. But she's like, you need your own show. And I'm like, okay, I'll have my own show. And so then I segued into having my own show right after hers. And it was literally the middle of the night. And now I'm articulate. But that was like 2010, 2011. I did not have good language skills at that time in my life. And you guys also know this about me too. Like my verbal is a lot better than my written. I have the worst handwriting, almost illegible. I transpose a lot of letters. I don't know if that's dyslexia, but I have a lot of brain damage around that. And very bad spelling and very poor grammar and not easy writing skills at all. It takes a lot for me to actually like if I'm going to write something. Like, okay, like I'm gonna have to sit down, I'm gonna have to focus, I'm gonna have to do this. They're like, don't talk to me, trying to write something. You know, like some people they write, it's easy. I'm like, no, like this is like running a marathon. It's the hardest thing for me. So yeah, writing stuff is very, very hard for me. But I would be happy to paint or do an interpretive dance for anything instead of writing a paper. It's like, can I just do an interpretive dance on that instead of writing a paper? So now you know more of what like why didn't I write a book or something like that? I'm like, can I please just do an interpretive dance instead of writing a book? But my verbal articulation has increased a lot because I've worked on it. So what I did was I used to have my middle of the night TV show, and this was public access TV. So this is kind of like pre-YouTube. People used to watch community access in the middle of the night, watch their crazy conspiracy theorist friends. And in Woodstock, it was Channel 23. And the motto was Channel 23, where anyone can be a star. I'm like, that's me. I'm anyone. I can do this. And also, what was really fun, so this is me in Woodstock back then. I was in my denim era when I was like, I'm going to fit in. I'm going to look exactly like everyone else. I'm going to wear all denim and really, quote unquote, fit in. And to be able to do the show, it's at the Community Access Theater. And you had to pick up the keys to access like the equipment there because it was all expensive stuff. Get it from the local police station, which was like, you know, this little house police station, not like a big giant fancy place, but in Woodstock. So I go in there in the middle of the night, sometimes having ingested cannabis in a prohibition state, to the police station and be like, I am wearing all denim. I am a completely normal citizen. I would like to borrow the keys to the Community Access Theater, please. And they'd be like, oh, hi, Aurora, here's your keys. I'd be like, I'm a completely normal citizen. Thank you. I know. And then I'd go and, you know, do my whole show and then return it back in the middle of the night. I always thought that was just the funniest thing. But yes, I'd be like, hi, police officers, I'm your best friend. I'm a completely law-abiding citizen. Yeah, and point is, I would do my Planet Aurora show and I would stumble over my words and just be very imperfect in my delivery. But I did it. And it was through doing that that I got better at being able to talk about these really deep concepts and even developing my curriculum and how I would structure being able to share these concepts with the world. That I initially I didn't know how to make it palatable to people, but I had to learn how people learn. And so after talking and kind of stumbling and doing these different episodes and things like that, then I learned like, oh, I need to do segments. I need to do like, now we're talking about color, or now we're talking about shape, or now we're talking about time. And I started to divide everything up into these different subjects. And then that was really the beginning of me figuring out my curriculum, which I now share with you each week on Wednesdays. So I love being Professor Aurora because initially I didn't have very much confidence, felt a little bit unseen, and didn't really have that much of my intellect acknowledged. And through working on my verbal skills, now you guys know, like, I have a lot going on in my brain. I have a lot of information and worthy thoughts to share. And then you can also tell I've worked hard at being able to make those neural connections so that I can even do something like you want to think of a particular word or phrase, that you can think of it. And sometimes I stumble still, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Because I used to be like, I used to say all the time in order to try to just buy myself a minute, like my brain's trying to work, thinking of something. Not doing that much anymore. So yeah, it just took a long time to be able to find my voice and find my articulation. Charlie B says, we love Professor Aurora in giant letters. Thank you. Truly, thank you. I can't get enough of the Cosmic Library that you share. Truly, thank you. And you guys, you can always ask me in these Ask Me Anythings. You can ask me Cosmic Library questions because I love doing that as well. So for example, like when I was working as a trimmer on those farms, very unglamorous, and they had no idea who I was and that a Cosmic Library was there trimming large amounts of canvas with them. Sometimes they would ask something and I would launch into a whole entire diatribe telling them all about something, to the point that I got nicknamed first Encyclopedia Aurorica, right? Like instead of Britannica, Encyclopedia Aurorica, and then Encyclopedia Alboria instead of Auroria, because they were very bored, because these were all like low intellect people that had no interest in what I was actually sharing. So they did not appreciate the encyclopedic knowledge that I had. But I love it when people do ask me anything and I get to talk about those things. Sometimes I'm amazed at the level of information that I have available. I find it does help when it is phrased in the form of a question, much like Jeopardy. Philip says, thank you, Aurora. Really enjoyed hearing your story and seeing you again, Professor Aurora. Have to leave late in the UK. Thank you for being here, Phil. And thanks for answering all my questions. Most grateful. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I'm going to say thank you to everyone. If I can do one more question. I keep on saying, like, I'm going to wrap it up. It's the end. But I'll do one more question if you want to have one more. I'm open to it. Not soon it's time for me to WALK someone special in my life and make sure that they get all the exercise that they need. I get lots of exercise during these videos. Someone needs to exercise outside. So that will happen very soon. But I'm open to one more question. If not, I'll wrap it up. But I love doing these type of sharings and asking me anything. But wait, okay, if there's no more question, then I'll end on one more anecdote. So this is good. So this is from like 2003 or 4 or so. So I was still a preschooler. I was really, really new here. I did not really know anything. And I was living in an apartment on my own for one of the first times, like a very, very shanty house in Woodstock. It was all like very poor, in very poor repair, totally falling down as part of this little like apartment zone that was there amidst many other apartments that were also kind of falling down. So it was normal in that place. And my neighbors were very humble people on the economic caste system. And some of them were Spanish speakers as well. And whenever in that time in my life, whenever someone invited me to participate in something social, I said yes. Because I'd be like, I'm getting to do something with people. You know, it's like if you go to a foreign country and whatever it is, they're like, come, like, we're going fishing. You'd be like, I know nothing about fishing, but I'm getting to do something with people. Let's go. All right. So I'm there in my apartment and they're playing the game bingo. And they invited me to play. And I'm like, oh, yes, I'd love to play. And I'm like, I have no idea what this game is or what bingo is. But yes, the answer is I want to be a part of it. And so I go down and I'm kind of like, again, they didn't know that I was an interdimensional visitor and a cosmic encyclopedia. I just did not have information about how to play the game named bingo. And I'm watching and learning by watching and learning. And it got to be my turn. And they said the letter and I put down my marker and they go, oh, bingo. And then they said another letter, put down my marker, said, oh, bingo. And then put down a marker again and said, oh, bingo, until one of my neighbors, her name is Rosa, she turned to me and she put her hand on my arm like this very gently and just said, Aurora, you only say bingo when you win the game. And I was like, oh, got it. All right, I'm learning now. All right. So that's a good Aurora anecdote to end upon. Gotta love it. I'm just endlessly enthusiastic. I will do all these wonderful things, exploring the human experience here, social interactions. All right, time for me to walk, cheeky. Time for me to get out and get some exercise. Thank you very much to everyone who's a part of this. And also, Brittany says, love these stories so much. Big cosmic and heart hugs to you and Cheeky. Thank you. And reminder, and I'll keep the information in the description of this video. Upcoming retreat in Sedona, September 2nd through 5th. Please come and be a part of it and hear more Aurora stories just like this and so much more. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your day.